morning. You're in week 41. And if you are looking for where can you get that schedule of weeks, you can find it at Amazon. There are two options for you. There is the Unboring Bible Journey and the Bible Journey. The Unboring Bible Journey has additional commentary and places for you to write. And the Bible Journey is just a little tiny booklet that just gives you the specific weekly breakdown so we can read through the entirety of the Bible in 1 year. And this video is specifically for week 41. And in week 41, you're going to come to Matthew 7. Matthew 7 is going to talk about, Jesus is talking about some very specific things, which seem unbelievably appropriate for what the church is going through today. He's talking about people who come amongst the sheep they're wolves, but they're dressed as sheep. And he's talking about people that produce fruit, but the fruit is not good fruit. Now that's an interesting concept. I feel like what we need to understand is that ultimately the wolves were among the sheep and they were getting away with it. And they were getting away with it because they looked exactly like the sheep, right? They talk like the sheep, they move like the sheep, they eat like the sheep, but ultimately they are there with the purpose of taking the sheep down. In addition, he starts talking about trees and how bushes, thistles can't bear great fruit, right? And a fruit tree can't bear something that it wasn't designed to do. But I want to draw your attention to the fact that everything bears fruit. What do I mean by that? I was reading an article recently about, actually it was an academic article, and it was about pruning grapevines. Actually, it was about all things grapevines. And it was, I believe, the University of Ohio. And they were talking about the best ways for vintners to get the greatest yield. And the schools had done this study. And it was so interesting because one of the things that they talked about was the fact that the most important part of the growing grape process was the pruning, which I wouldn't have thought of. Now, there were a couple things in this article that were interesting and shocking, but that was one of the most, because one of the things that it talked about is one of the worst things for grapes, and maybe I shouldn't say that because there's pests and blight and all those things. But if you wanted a really great harvest, the vine had to be trained to put its energy into the fruit, not growth. What do I mean by that? Well, they said it was almost impossible to trim this vine too much. In other words, a vine can look healthy and it can be growing tons and tons and tons of leaves and just growing like crazy. But when it came to fruit production, it was either small or not very healthy or undernourished, or the vine itself could become diseased. Why? Because overgrowth of leaves could actually inhibit fruit production. So one of the things they had to do was when a tree was growing crazy with leaves, the vine dresser, the vintner, would have to come in and start cutting off this growth because it was putting so much effort into the leaves that the fruit it wasn't good. It was bad. It was bitter. It wasn't sweet. It was underripe. It wasn't as large as it could be. So it had to train the plant how to increase the fruit production. And I feel that has a really great correlation with Matthew 7 when it talks about the fact that, listen, just because you're putting out fruit doesn't actually mean that it's good fruit. And it ties this to the fact that there will be people among you who look like one thing and who do another, and who'll put out fruit, but the fruit isn't actually very good fruit. So it gives us a criteria to be aware of what's actually happening in the circles that we walk in among us. People can only hide who they are for so long, because ultimately you see the things that they produce, the way they talk, the way they treat people, the way they study, the things that they value. Do they show up? Do they not show up? Do they give their word and follow through, or do they not? Do they tear down? Do they gossip? And when they do produce fruit, when they do kind things, when they do encouraging things, do they do them to benefit themselves? Because that would be bad tasting fruit. Or do they do it to build someone else up without any expectation of gain? So ultimately, if this is our litmus test and you're trying to figure out those people that you see out around, those who are elevated on social media, those that are out in front claiming to be servants of the Most High God, and maybe they're even producing fruit. The question is, what kind of fruit? Because if the fruit they're producing, they are constantly having to draw your attention to, if they need you to recognize these amazing things that they've done, I'd question the taste of that fruit. Because if they're doing things that look right, that sound right, but ultimately are for the benefit of only themselves, that's not good fruit. Because if you think about in nature, fruit, what was the whole point of it? It's supposed to be sweet and good so that the animals would enjoy it, that we would enjoy it, and we would spread the seed around. Why? So that it would multiply, so that it would produce more. But when somebody produces fruit that only benefits them, that seed doesn't get scattered. That seed doesn't grow. That seed doesn't produce anything good for anyone else. So there's your litmus test. Read Matthew 7 again and see if you can determine the lesson that Jesus is trying to give to his disciples, because he knew even in the church, they were going to have problems with people that looked like they loved the Lord, looked like they walked according to God's laws. They looked righteousness, but their righteousness was self-righteousness, and their motives weren't necessarily be pleasing to God. Not coming at anybody, not trying to be the Holy Spirit and convict anybody. I'm just trying to equip you with tools to help you assess the current situation you're in and the people that you need to maybe invest in and withdraw from. All right. Have a great day. Thanks for joining me.